Hello and welcome to this week's video podcast on teaching the whole child. Over the past 2 weeks, we have looked at some of the learning theories that underpin teaching practices. These include both behaviourism and cognitive learning theory. As a follow-on from these discussions, today we'll be looking at effective pedagogical practices of a teacher. We are looking at this from the perspective of the whole child, understanding that it is the multiple dimensions of a child's world that affect their learning. We will now take some time to discuss effective pedagogical practice and how this may work within the role of educator. Pedagogy can be viewed from different perspectives, but for the purposes of this discussion, we'll be using Van Mason's description as pedagogy being the art and science of educating children. When it is viewed from this perspective, it highlights the importance of relationships and the interplay between teaching and learning. Our role as educator is to facilitate the relationship between ourselves as teacher, the learner, as well as the subject being learnt. Having sound knowledge in the learning theories that underpin teaching assist a teacher to create different learning experiences for different situations. This knowledge of learning theories and conditions that are needed for learning also help the teacher to have a framework for developing learning processes. Jeanne Orrod, author of Human Learning, tells us that in order to maximise productive student learning and in turn produce good academic outcomes, teachers must understand the factors that influence learning as well as the learning theories that underlie it. Orrod also tells us taking a collective view of the learning theories available will assist teachers in remaining open to a variety of ideas and perspectives. There is no one universal approach that will suit all situations and all students. Therefore, an effective teacher uses a number of different skills, approaches, and strategies in order to create good learning outcomes for children. Effective pedagogical practice also takes into account the whole child, not only placing value on academic achievement and outcomes, but also the physical, moral, social, emotional, and spiritual development of the child. Some would agree that it is this perspective that is imperative to good learning outcomes for children. John Lauren, author of What Expert Teachers Should Do, tells us that the way in which we teach should be the consequence of reflection on the learning opportunities or possible limitations. This should result in a particular teaching procedure being chosen for a particular reason, to meet a particular purpose, in response to the nature of the teaching and the learning environment. In addition to this, it is also vital for the teacher to remain reflective in their practice and to be constantly reviewing and assessing their own skills and practices. Doing so will allow the teacher to remain open and on a continued learning journey of their own, developing new skills and abilities along the way. As an example of good pedagogy in practice, today I've chosen to look at an activity used with a group of children in grade 6. As discussed by Lauren, this activity is a good example of how student experiences shape the nature of teaching and the learning rather than being a dominance of information translation. Over the past 4 weeks, the class has had many activities, discussions, and lessons on the subject of different cultural beliefs and experiences. As we have come to the end of this topic, I have asked children to look back over their work in revision and write down 15 dot points of what they have learnt in regards to this topic. After completing this, they are to break up into pairs and verbally elaborate and present their dot points to their partner. Their partner is then required to say 3 things that the other person has done well in their presentation. Some of the factors that I have taken into account in this activity to ensure that I have considered effective pedagogy are as follows. Is there enough emotional safety in this activity for children to discuss the areas of cultural beliefs and experiences? What services are available for children if needed further support, such as counselling or pastoral care? Does this activity match the stage of development that these children are at according to theorists of development such as Piaget or Vygotsky. Are there any children involved in this activity that have special needs, and how can this activity accommodate to those needs? How does this activity build on social and moral development? Does this activity use the principles outlined in the learning theories such as behaviourism and cognitive development? Do the children have access to all the resources that they need, and what can be offered to them if they do not? How does this activity support and enhance the whole child? How will the instructions be given, and will they be given in more than one format? Have I considered a multi-dimensional approach to the assessment of this task? These points were some of the key aspects that I ensured had been carefully considered and incorporated within the learning activity. As you can see from this discussion, in order to achieve effective pedagogical practice, a number of different factors need to be taken into account. A teacher needs to remain creative, flexible, reflective, and working from the perspective of the whole child, standing in the knowledge that there is no one universal theory, but a collective of perspectives that will assist the teacher in creating learning experiences that translate into good academic outcomes for children.